So I'd like to start off with just an introduction of yourself and a little bit of your background.
Okay, so my name is Andy Cawthon. I've been a resident of Grand Haven since 2000. My background, by growing up, I was born in Dallas, Texas, to a military family, moved a lot until teenage years, spent time in Pennsylvania, but then went to college in California. I've been following the discussions around the closure of the power plant, partly as a result of my involvement in the downtown development or Main Street program. So snowmelt is near and dear to the merchants downtown. When the discussion started about closing the plant, the first thing that sprang to merchants' mind was, where's our hot water going to come from? So following that, from that perspective, I ran for city council 2 years ago, so there was the not quite amenable discussion between city council and the Board of Light and Power Board about the plant and about running BLP. So basically looking at the ongoing discussion and saying a more reasonable, research-oriented mind might help in these discussions. And then Jim decided to step down, seat became available, here I am.
All right. So we've touched on this some already, your drive to run for the BLP. Could you expand on that some?
If you look at the board, many of the members of the board have served for 12 to 18 years. Their knowledge of the public power marketplace is somewhat rooted in coal-powered steam plants, which is what we had. And that said, the market has become incredibly dynamic. State mandates for renewable energy sources and percentages, different technologies, falling prices for things like solar and wind. And so looking at the strategic power plan from the board, by state mandate, we have to have 20+% renewable now, and that's rising at about 2% a year. We have a service area that's wider than the city boundaries, so we serve 4 townships as well. And coming back to the board, it seemed like a new face, a fresh look, and as I explained in the League of Women Voters candidate forum, I will ask a lot of naive and apparently stupid questions because I'm an outsider. And I don't know that that is a bad thing. I think it's perhaps time to ask a lot of naive questions like, why are we doing it this way? And if the answer is we've always done it that way, maybe it's time to look at how we do things. So here I am again.
Okay. Now with the closing of the Sims plant, that's kind of a big thing on everybody's mind coming up in 2020. How would you, as a member of the BLP, help the community with that transition?
First off, and again back to the League of Women Voters, I advocated for more open board meetings, including having some board meetings that aren't at 4 in the afternoon, the third Thursday of the month, to allow residents to be able to attend and voice their opinions. So let's have some more board meetings, say 7 o'clock at night, perhaps on a Saturday, so that people with families could make the meetings. But the goal in all of that would be public education. There are a lot of moving parts. There's the demolition of the plant, which is complex but fairly straightforward. There are companies that do this. The more complicated question is remediation. Once the plant is gone, what do you have to do to the site? Some of that is dictated by EPA regulation, some by state regulation, but basically the site has to be brought back to something close to what it was before a coal plant started there 60 years ago. So if you look at the island where the coal pile is, I'm told by board members that there is as much as several feet of coal dust under the coal pile. All that has to get dug up, carted away, and burned. So now we have an island minus the coal pile, minus the coal dust. But we also have wetlands and potentially a building to be constructed on site. So how far do you carry the remediation? There is a constituency in town that says, don't rebuild anything industrial on the site, put condos in a hotel and maybe marinas. And that's a fine plan, but the remediation then has to go to a higher level. And with that higher level, a higher price. So you say you want condos and a marina and a hotel. How much are you willing to pay for that? Because someone has to pay for that. And Board of Light and Power's responsibility is to carry it to industrial use. That would satisfy their regulators. So community education on, you say you want this to be the use, that use carries this price tag. And like with the surveys that BLP did with its ratepayers, its customers, you say you want a peaking gas-powered power plant on that site that'll be smaller. Here's the price tag for that. Are you willing to pay for that? And the ratepayers statistically said no more than 5% more than what we're paying now. So again, you say you want that. Okay, here's a design for that. Here's a price tag for that. Do you still want it? And so at the residential level, the same kind of thing to say, if we can buy from the grid at 2/3 the price that it costs us to generate, and to generate we have to build a plant and issue a bond issue. So let's say the plant comes in at 1/3 of what the Burnson-McDonald original result was, 110 million. Let's say it's 33 million. If you bond to pay for it, there's an extra 30% involved in bonding. So it's really not 30 or 33 million, it's 40 plus million. You say you want your peaking plant. If it costs you 42 million, do you still want it? Because you're going to have to pay for that in your electric bill. So consumer education, both at the residential level and at the commercial user level, would aid in this discussion immeasurably. And a lot of people, from the feedback I've gotten from my office hours, frankly don't care. If they go to the wall and flip the switch and the lights come on, and they come on reliably, big issue, and the bills aren't too high, that's as much as I want to know. But there are some that say, back to that, we've always done it this way. Well, okay, we've always done it this way, and here's the cost to continue to do it that way. Are you willing to continue to pay for that? And if not, here are some alternatives. Here are some alternative costs. Which one do you think you'd want? So consumer education would be key. And I was involved in earlier careers in adult education and sales, so I think I could maybe lead those discussions and that education. I'm really good on the whiteboard.
Alright. So that's pretty much the questions I had. I have an opportunity for you to have a closing statement why people should vote for you.
Well, again, back to the complexity of the issue. You have differing sources of power. You have government regulatory mandates that say your power mix should be this by this year, more renewable 2 years later, more renewable 2 years later. How do you satisfy that mandate if you don't have a renewable source yourself? So the board and staff rightly have been contracting through the grid, through MPPA. They're, call it a buying consortium, but they're able to buy renewables from different sources and basically get a credit for solar, a credit for wind, a credit for landfill gas, et cetera, et cetera. That said, the buying of that is basically like trading commodity futures. So I want 10 years of solar power starting February of 2034 for 10 years. And I'm willing to pay this. And the supplier that's got that particular kind of power says, no, I want $32 a kilowatt hour. Well, no, I'll come back to you in a year. We'll see. And so it's a negotiation of a price for a moving target. And that adds complexity. And complexity is something in my sales career that I dealt with all the time. So numbers don't bother me. Fluid market situations don't bother me. And I'm somewhat nerdy that way. And perhaps a nerd on the board might be a nice thing to have about now.